I think it's fair to say that Joe Biden is one of the worst presidents we've ever had, and he's in the top three. I mean, you've got Buchanan, you've got Jimmy Carter, you've got Woodrow Wilson. Yeah, but I think, for all of Carter's problems, Biden's probably up there. Now, some people have said, it's not fair. It's too soon. It's not even been a year. And I'm like, doesn't that say a lot? It's not even been a year. Okay, well, hold on. I can already hear the Democrats. Thousands of voices screaming across the land saying Tim Pool is biased against Democrats. Don't worry, I got something for you. You don't like Joe Biden. Come on, don't pretend like you do. Joe Biden is both simultaneously releasing thousands of migrants across the country, shuttling migrant children into various states, smuggling them overnight without alerting local authorities, and also deporting more people than Donald Trump. It's really something incredible. And it doesn't say, it was interesting to see this story breaking from the AP. Officials say many Haitian migrants are being released in the U.S. And then to see this story from The Intercept from just yesterday in targeting Haitians, Biden may execute the largest mass expulsion of asylum seekers in recent history. Okay, now you may be saying, well, hold on there a minute. We have hard facts. AP says Joe Biden is releasing the Haitian migrants into the U.S. And The Intercept is just arguing he might have the biggest expulsion of asylum seekers in recent history. All right, let's play this game and then I'll give you the news. Asylum seekers. Sure. Do we just blindly call every single person an asylum seeker or a legal immigrant? I don't know what you want to do about it, right? Because there's no unauthorized immigrant, I think the AP has said. Many of these people are seeking asylum, but that doesn't mean they legitimately have claims to asylum. Of course, The Intercept will load the headline that way. And so we can see on the left, they're saying Biden is going to expel the more asylum seekers than any other president. Meanwhile, the AP is saying he's releasing everybody in the country. So let's talk about what's objectively true. It is true, as long as we actually follow the mainstream news, that Biden is releasing the Haitian migrants. It is a speculation that he might expel them. In targeting Haitians, Biden may execute the largest may. Okay, so this is not even news. This is an opinion piece. Excellent. Ryan Devereaux. I know, Ryan. Ryan, this is an opinion piece. Okay, can you put opinion on it? You see, once we launch our fact-checking nonprofit, which you've already filed the paperwork on, this would get a strike for opinion. Biden may execute the largest mass expulsion of asylum seekers in recent history. All right, that's your opinion. We don't know that he actually may do that. That's an opinion, not a fact. Now, they might argue it's a fact, but when you couple this with the other story about them just being released, not true. But I do want to point something out. On the left, there's another conversation happening that Joe Biden is an evil deporter. And that's where the narrative comes from. From tracking Biden from the left on Twitter, according to CNBC, President Biden has used Title 42 to expel 690,000 people, 250,000 more people than Trump. AJ Plus says Trump expelled 440,000, Biden 690,000, which means in all of Trump's years, he did not deport that many people under Title 42. Joe Biden has done more. So it's really, really fascinating. And I'm trying to reconcile this. Like, how is it that on the left you say Joe Biden is allowing rampant illegal immigration? On the right you have people saying Joe Biden's allowing rampant illegal immigration. On the left you say they say Joe Biden is deporting massive amounts of people and asylum seekers. And you have these two distinct universes that don't seem to make sense. How can they exist at the same time? Well, far be it from me to argue that Joe Biden has strong mental faculties and has prepared all of this in an effort to pit the left and the right against each other. I really don't think that's the case. I think Joe Biden's a nut. I think his brain don't work, and I think he has no idea what's going on. I think the southern border has collapsed. Joe Biden is trying to deport many people, but can't handle the surge that he asked for. Joe Biden said, surge the border. He did. I'm pretty sure I covered this when it happened. Alex Jones was mentioning it on the show on the IRL, a couple days ago. And I was like, he didn't say like that. And Alex was like, pull it up. And then we pulled up the article. And yeah, Joe Biden says, surge the border, everyone come. And then, no kidding. Okay, so I'll put it this way. Joe Biden is both simultaneously telling people to come and then deporting them. Talk about a scumbag who is wasting American taxpayer dollars. Would it not be cheaper for everybody just to say, don't come and then secure the border? No. It accomplishes both narratives. The left can ignore the fact that Joe Biden is allowing thousands of migrants just to pour in and do whatever they want and pretend like Joe Biden is the new deporter in chief. And the right will just say, look at the southern border, all these people pouring in. And the reality is Joe Biden has just lost control of everything. So I'll put it this way. It kind of feels like, you remember those old cartoons where one of the characters on a boat and then a leak springs in the boat and they're like, oh no, they put their finger in it. But then another leak springs and they put their finger in it. And then eventually they have all their fingers and toes and they're all like, twisted up trying to plug the holes that are bursting in their ship. That's what it feels like. Joe Biden can't handle the wave of immigrants due to the southern border crisis he created, and he did. Chicago Tribune says it. And I have this, and he said, surge the border. And so he's desperately trying to bail water as the waters rise faster. The left criticizes him for trying to get rid of the migrants, but the flow of migrants is greater than the rate of deportation. So he gets hit from both sides. Here's a story from the Associated Press. They say, many Haitian migrants camped in a small Texas border town are being released into the in the United States. Two U.S. officials said, undercutting the Biden administration's public statements that the thousands in the camp faced immediate expulsion. Haitians have been freed on a very, very large scale in recent days, according to one U.S. official who put the figure in the thousands. The official, who has direct knowledge of operations, was not authorized to discuss the matter Tuesday and spoke on the condition of anonymity. Many have been released without notices to appear at an immigration office within 60 days. An outcome that requires less processing time from Border Patrol agents than ordering an appearance in an immigration court, and points to the speed at which authorities are moving, the official said. The Homeland Security Department has been busing Haitians from Del Rio to El Paso, Laredo, and the Rio Grande Valley along the Texas border this week. Added flights to Tucson, Arizona, the official said. They are processed by the Border Patrol at those locations. So let me just point out the obvious. Why does Joe Biden have more deportations than Trump? Under Title 42, particularly, because he lost control of the border and now these people are surging in and he's desperately trying to get many of them out. Well, there you go. And now the myopic view of the left, they will criticize him as just being an anti-asylum deporter in chief, when the reality is Joe Biden created this problem himself and is struggling to do anything about it. I have to wonder if he has the mental faculties or the willpower, let alone the wherewithal, to handle something like this. The AP says a second U.S. official, also with direct knowledge and speaking in the condition of anonymity, said large numbers of Haitians were being processed under immigration laws and not being placed on expulsion flights to Haiti that started Sunday. The official couldn't be more specific about how many. U.S. authorities scrambled in recent days for buses to Tucson, but resorted to flights when they couldn't find enough transportation contractors, both officials said. Coast Guard planes took Haitians from Del Rio to El Paso. The releases in the U.S. were occurring despite the signaling of a massive effort to expel Haitians on flights to Haiti under pandemic-related authority that denies migrants an opportunity to seek asylum. A third U.S. official not authorized to discuss operations said there were 7 daily flights to Haiti planned starting Wednesday. Accounts of wide-scale releases, some observed at the Del Rio bus station by AP journalists, are at odds with statements a day earlier by Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas, who traveled to Del Rio to promise swift action. Oh, my stars and garters. Is the Biden administration lying about what's happening? I couldn't believe it. If you come to the United States illegally, you will be returned. Your journey will not succeed, and you will be endangering your life and your family's life, he said at a Monday news conference. You know, as the saying goes, the lie travels halfway around the world before the truth can strap on his boots. Let me bring you back, my friends, to March 24th, 2021. The Chicago Tribune. Biden called for the border surge. Now he owns it. This is not even that long ago. And we have this quote here. He was asked, are you prepared to say tonight that you and Obama made a mistake on deportations? Why should Latinos trust you? This is from Jorge Ramos. Biden said, I would in fact make sure that we immediately surge to the border. All those people are seeking asylum. They deserve to be heard. That's who we are. We are a nation that says, if you want to flee and you are fleeing oppression, you should come. Flee they did. And come they did, surging. Some wearing Biden T-shirts reading, Biden, please let us in. They see him as the migrant president. And so many feel they're going to reach the U.S., Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador said of Biden in an exclusive report by Reuters. We need to work together to regulate the flow because this business can't be tackled from one day to the next. So President Biden immediately stops construction on the border wall and begins to unravel at the end of the Trump administration, Trump administration policy that kept the border better contained. The most significant of these changes was Biden ending the Trump administration Remain in Mexico order that kept migrants from rushing the border when they appealed for amnesty status. Well, as we now know, I believe the courts have reinstated Remain in Mexico. Joe Biden damaged the border, ripped it open and said, come on in, baby. So that when the left comes out and says Joe Biden is deporting more people, yeah, it's kind of like he's pulling a sorting algorithm. I would say that he's doing a sorting algorithm if I believe that he had any kind of competence. But instead, it just feels like he opened the dam, the floodwaters are rushing in, and now he's trying to remove those floodwaters with a bucket. It's not going to work. You've got to shut down you've got to reseal the dam. They're not doing it. And so long as that's the case and migrants are flowing in and rushing in, the only thing they can do is welcome to America, I suppose. They say the releases come amid a quick effort to empty the camp under a bridge that, according to some estimates, held more than 14,000 people. Now, let's do some basic arithmetic. You see, recently there were many stories about the squalor in which these migrants were living in under this bridge. We also learned they were walking back and forth between Mexico and the U.S. for carryout, because that means you have a strong border, right? Several journalists launched drones to fly over the border to film the camp. And the Biden administration, the FAA, put a ban on drone flights over this area. Seems pretty obvious why they did that. And then we learn that thousands of these people have been freed into the U.S. Do I believe that Joe Biden is trying to deal with the migrant crisis and send these people home and say no or deny them or even process their asylum claims? No. I think the goal was pressure release valve. Get as many into the country as you can, and then we'll have less of a crisis. You see how these things work? Put it this way. You've got 14,000 people living in a shanty town, a tent city under a bridge, under and around this bridge. And it looks really bad for you. You could deport the people, secure the border, and stop the growth of this shanty town. Or you can release them into the U.S., release pictures of a smaller shanty town, and say, see, we're dealing with the problem. Quite literally sweeping people under the rug. Isn't that amazing? They say the criteria for deciding who was flown to Haiti and who was released to the U.S. is unclear. But two U.S. officials said single adults were the priority for expulsion flights. The Homeland Security Department did not immediately respond to a request for comment late Tuesday night. Meanwhile, Mexico has begun busing and flying Haitian migrants away from the U.S. border, authorities said Tuesday, signaling a new level for support for the U.S. as the camp presented President Joe Biden with a humanitarian and increasingly political challenge. There's a viral post on Reddit where all of the insane morons live, where I think it was Matt Walsh. And he said something similar to what I said. Why are Haitian migrants who live thousands of miles away from Mexico getting on boats and planes to Mexico and then coming through Del Rio? He didn't say that specifically. He said, why are they coming through the Del Rio border when they live thousands of miles away? And someone responded, wait until Matt learns about boats and planes. And then all of these cult morons start laughing. Like, hold on there a minute. You see, if you lack the ability to think critically, you would just chortle along. But if you can think critically, you may be asking yourself, why is it that people in Haiti are taking boats and planes to Mexico instead of America? Because the border is broken and they know it. They are exploiting the crisis created by Joe Biden. Well, bravo, Joe Biden, on destroying the southern border. You wanted to end Trump's legacy. You did it. And now you have like several dozen eggs on your face, I guess. But I don't know that Joe Biden cares. I mean, let's be real. Joe Biden is perfect for the establishment right now. They wanted to unravel Donald Trump's policies. Donald Trump's policies that were very popular. The economy was a-roaring before COVID. Securing the border made everybody happy. Not everybody, but most people. You know, a lot of these cult members are like, no wall, even though Hillary Clinton wanted a border barrier, as she called it. Bringing back jobs made people happy. What was it, a $3 billion investment into, I think it was Ohio. Or it might have been Michigan. No, I think it was Michigan. For auto manufacturing. You see, those Trump policies, they make Americans happy. Well, they want to undo the Trump agenda. But what happens when you go in, you undo the Trump agenda, that was popular. People gonna get mad. So what do? Joe Biden, he was perfect, wasn't he? He didn't campaign. He was calling a lid. He was the corporeal form they needed, so they say, so that when people voted against Trump, they got Joe Biden. And you know what? It's perfect. Joe Biden can be Jimmy Carter. It's like, it reminds me of Batman. That's right. Joe Biden, just like Batman. At the end of The Dark Knight, when Harvey Dent dies and they're like, what are we going to do? What are we going to say about these people who were murdered? And Batman's like, I did that. I can be that hero. And that's Joe Biden taking the fall for destroying popular policies. Okay, he's kind of like an anti-Batman, right? He's like old and decrepit, not, strong, well-fit, and well-funded. Although the dude did become rich after leaving the vice presidency. But I'll put it this way. Joe Biden is providing excellent cover for the establishment as they tear down popular policies that hurt the working class. The establishment left is cheering for it as the fires consume our economy. And the progressive left is acting like Trump was worse. Isn't that incredible? When you look at Trump's policies and you're like, wow, we had actually accomplished many of the goals of the left, which is funny. This is the problem I have with the DSA types and the popular progressive streamers. It is a fact that under Trump, many economic milestones were accomplished due to the roaring economy. In 2019, there was an article I was reading because 2020's economy was not good because of COVID. But in 2019, there's an article I read. It said, it was a series of articles actually talking about major accomplishments in the workforce without the use of government intervention or labor unions. Notably, some fast food chains had switched to 4-day work weeks with increased pay. More businesses were offering up vacation time, and the lives of the working class were generally improving. All that stuff is true. The left often says we need a 4-day work week. We need better pay. We need to increase minimum wage. Under Trump, wages were increasing. Under Biden, real wage growth is negative. Now, of course, when you look at the literal wage growth, it's like, oh, it's a little bit higher than inflation, right? Except with inflation, wage growth is negative. The American people right now, regardless of whether or not they get $15 an hour, are seeing their buying power decrease. It was different under Trump. And you know what? I guess I think about a lot of this stuff, right? Living in cities, people not having kids, the economy being destroyed. And I'm like, for the left, well, they can reap what they sow. If they want to live in these cities and be locked down and they're scared and terrified, well, sure, they can choose to live the way they want. For the people who still live in these places, watching them figuratively burn down, and literally, I guess, with Antifa and Black Lives Matter, I have to wonder, why are you still there? A lot of people say, because I can't leave, and that's a lie. I've been homeless before. It is a lie. I once had an apartment in Chicago. I completely just up and left, choosing to be homeless in California. Yeah, I was young, I was excited, I wanted to travel, and I think it ultimately worked out. So I said, I'm going to leave my apartment, sell all my stuff, and just go to California and try and do something different. Chicago is a one-horse town, It's a cultural dead end. There's nothing going on. So I had $200. I did a ride share to California, and there you go. I found a job, found someone let me crash at their place. I had bounced around couches for a little bit, lucky enough to have met people that, So I'll put it this way. Perhaps there are people in harder circumstances. Perhaps you have a family. And I understand that can be difficult. A lot of people say I'm tied to my mortgage. I can't just leave. I understand all of that. I do. But the reality is nothing is stopping you from literally walking out the front door and going somewhere else. Now, of course, people would give me arguments that don't actually address the issue, saying, I have a bunch of possessions. I have a mortgage. I can't quit my job. How will I feed my kids? And I'm like, I understand life is hard. I understand it will be very, very, very difficult and nigh impossible to maintain your standard of living. Quite literally, though, if it was really that bad, you can walk. What I mean to say is, if where you lived in a city, right? So those of you that live in cities still that oppose this stuff, you're like, I can't just leave. Well, hold on there a minute. Your standard of living right now is better than abandoning it to get out of the cities. The problems you are facing in those cities is not great enough for you to decide that it is worth leaving your stuff behind. You see the point? If it ever got to a point where it was a Mad Max style or Escape from New York kind of living, You'd leave in 2 seconds. You'd be like, I'll put it this way, a fire. When you're in your house and the house starts on fire and the fire's bad, depending on the degree of fire, you might do something. Well, I think a lot of people might be foolish. They hear a smoke alarm go off and they grab something. So you should have a bug out bag for, with shoes and so you can go outside and be safe, and cash and stuff like that, a flashlight, maybe even a tent. I don't know. Find a good bug out bag. But if you were in your house and a fire started, you wouldn't say, I'm not leaving until I get my stuff out of here. You may be saying, I will not leave this house until I get my kids out of here. That I can understand. But even with a roaring fire, at a certain point you say, the threat to me is greater than the possessions in the house, and you will leave them behind. For the time being, the people who are complaining about cities, people like me, I left. And I understand it's not as easy for everybody, but the people who live in these cities are basically saying, right now, the threat to me and my family is not enough to warrant me just walking out the front door and getting out of this place. For some people, it was. People in Minnesota where the riots were. So I get it. But I will say, do you want to sit and wait for the fires to reach your living room where you're sitting? Or is it a small enough fire that's being struggled to, the garage is on fire. They can't contain it. And so you're like, okay, it's nowhere near this part of the house. I'm going to go downstairs and try and grab, my wallet. Or I'm going to go into my room, grab my wallet. I've got about 10 seconds. I think I can pull it off. It kind of feels like people are sitting in their living rooms with the fires raging and they're like, yeah, I'll be fine. And I'm like, maybe you should be thinking about what you're going to be doing once that fire reaches the living room. And okay, maybe a lot of people are. So I'll put it this way. Joe Biden may be deporting a lot of people, but he can't contain the southern border. So long as people are walking back and forth, I think it's fairly obvious there is no containment at all. In which case, I hope you're getting ready for that fire as it reaches your living room. You may be sitting there saying, I can't just leave, Tim. It's not that easy. And I'm like, okay, but you better start figuring out what you're going to do when it does get substantially worse. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all then.